Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and today we will be doing a debrief of Rebelle's story and a quick summary of Rebelle's story for those of you who have not listened to it yet. Rebelle grew up as a driven, adventurous, high-achieving person. She trusted herself. She followed her own inner voice. She became a very high-level skier, had Olympic dreams, and that got thwarted. She was in a serious car accident. After the accident, she started going to law school, started off going in a wheelchair, and she was someone who believed that she could survive anything after that. And then she eventually meets the abuser in her life, and at first it felt romantic. They had briefly met once before, and when he saw her again, he told her that he'd been trying to get a hold of her for a year. He made it sound like destiny had stepped in. And they had these strange coincidences. They lived in the same places. They had mutual connections. So he made the beginning of their story feel like fate, like it was this big story. It wasn't just, I met this guy. It was, maybe this was supposed to happen. And he also presented himself as this wounded person. So Rebelle became the capable and strong one, and she felt pulled into this idea that if she could love him enough and guide him through everything enough, that he'll become the person that he's supposed to be. But early on, the abuser here still had contact with other women, and when Rebelle questioned these things, he made her feel crazy, jealous, and unreasonable. And then he had some crocodile tears, the apologies, a lot of childhood explanations, and promises that he would change. And from there, they got married. And then these patterns start to show up again. He starts stonewalling during conflict. He starts avoiding responsibility more. He barely worked at times. And Rebelle is handling the bills, the house, the work, the parenting, the emotional management of everything, all of the adult responsibilities. And he just presented himself as this wounded person while she was cast as this strong one who should understand, forgive him, carry the load, and keep going. A lot of weaponized incompetence was used here, and weaponized competence, saying that she knows how to do these things, so she should just do these things. And then all of a sudden, fate steps in again. An opportunity arises for her husband, and they move to France after what seems here like just a dream for both of them. And that moment here feels again like fate. And years earlier, Rebelle had put a villa overlooking the Mediterranean on her vision board. And once again here, it looks like the universe is telling her to stay. And her friends were also telling her that this is too good to pass up. So things were okay here for a bit, but as their child got older, Rebelle's ex was not treating their child with care, and he was also undermining her parenting at the same time. And eventually Rebelle said that she wanted a divorce, and that is when the story here changes again. And Rebelle found out that he was having an affair. She found out there had been lies layered on lies. She found out that he was really just focused on her money, and then came the legal abuse. And he used court systems, police complaints, child services. He used their son as leverage. He tried to make the divorce and custody process a really destructive thing. He tried to really inflict as much pain as possible. And what had been confusing inside this marriage for Rebelle, when this started to happen, she really started to see who this person was and what he was capable of after this separation occurred. And her story is one that just shows that she knew something was wrong, but it took until the separation process to really get full clarity of who this abuser really is and what they were really capable of. And now we're going to discuss the key themes and takeaways of this story. And number one is when fate becomes part of the trap. And that's just a big takeaway in Rebelle's story. It's fate. And at the beginning, he tells her that he'd been trying to find her for a year. He says he knew he would find her. Then all these coincidences around the places they live, people they knew, and the way their lives seemed to overlap happened to come about. And that can feel really intoxicating at the beginning of this relationship. And it gives this relationship a big story before there's enough evidence of who this character really is. And because when someone makes the beginning feel like fate, it can make red flags feel like obstacles in a love story instead of warning signs. And that's how this fate fantasy can really become a cage that you are living in. And then eventually, also within this, they watch the movie The Secret, and they start manifesting, fate manifesting, very woo-woo. This movie bonded them. So things weren't great up until this point, and then this movie bonded them. And there was this thing about fate once again. So later, when this France opportunity appears where the husband gets a job or a job opportunity as to be a chef in France, that feels like the same feeling coming back, the secret movie feeling coming back, the beginning of the relationship feeling coming back, very fate-based, fate from the manifesting. And then her friends reinforce this as well. And that's a big thing too. But when you look at all these things, these were all cycles of fate that just reset the relationship every single time. Rebelle was going through periods at these points where, like, I don't know if I'm staying or if I'm going, but she was really at her wit's end trying to figure out what was going on. And these fate things just reestablished the relationship every single time. A big move, a new dream, a new shared goal, a new version of the relationship, a new chapter. And those moments can keep someone from leaving because it feels like the relationship has finally found its purpose again. And then we have a key takeaway in theme 2, how Rebelle's strength was used against her, weaponized incompetence, and weaponized competence. So with Rebelle here, she saw herself as a very strong person, and it was mentioned in the episode by her and by me. And whatever she puts her mind to, she just does it. She became a high-level athlete, then gets into a car accident. Her life is in danger. She overcomes that, becomes a lawyer. You know, at that point, she believes she can really do anything. So when this relationship is occurring and everything starts to fall in her lap, household duties, child raising, working, keeping the marriage together, all of those duties, her being this strong person, she said to herself, you know, I can manage all of this. So she just did them. But to remind everyone here, you know, when you're functioning like this, it doesn't mean that things are okay. It just means that you're still functioning. It still doesn't mean internally that you're okay if you're not exhausted or tired or you're being affected by all the, you know, emotional things that are going on, the little abuses that are going on. And this is where this type of strength or belief in this strength, it can be exploited. And this is where weaponized incompetence becomes part of her story, because the abuser here, he didn't carry his share. He didn't handle responsibilities. And eventually her competence became the excuse for why she should do it. She was better at it. She was already doing it. So why don't you just keep doing it? She knew how. I don't know how to do those things. You know how to do those things. You know, it was easier for her to do than for him to do. So these things about, I don't know how to do them, weaponized incompetence, but also she was so competent in doing everything, it was an excuse for him to say, just do them because you're so good at them. And once that dynamic here is in place, the survivor is not just doing more work, they're slowly being trained to believe that the relationship is only functioning if they themselves overfunction. And then key takeaway number 3 is gaslighting and the creation of self-doubt. So Rebelle had a really strong inner voice, and she had spent her life trusting that voice. But then slowly she began questioning that trust. She saw things, she felt things, she noticed phone calls, women, contradictions. His explanations just didn't feel right, and then he would deny it, explain it away, make her feel crazy, make her feel like the problem was her reaction. That type of gaslighting going on here was a really slow drip. It doesn't erase your reality all at once, and sometimes it makes you put your reality just on trial. And Rebelle started needing outside confirmation of what she was going through and what she was being accused of. So she starts thinking, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am jealous. And you start thinking, maybe I am the one who does not know how to be loved. And that last one there is a big thing for Rebelle, because everyone around her could see how much this person, this abuser, was performing love. The abuser here would talk her up to other people. He'd make grand statements to the point where others thought Rebelle was so lucky to be loved like that. And that is very confusing. These two things started to collide, creating more doubt, less trust with this outside reinforcement, and this performance plus the denial that is going on. It really starts to become evidence against yourself, creating more self-doubt. And then theme 4, key takeaway 4, is the post-separation abuse in the legal system in this story. And once Rebelle says that she wants a divorce and really begins to hold firm, the mask completely comes off in a different way in this story. And after separation, the control happens through court filings, custody threats, police complaints, child protection reports, financial pressure, false narratives, and just ongoing litigation here. And the goal here is wear the survivor down as much as possible. Drain their money, drain their energy, make them look unstable, make them afraid, make them pay for leaving them. And in Rebelle's story, the abuser used their son as leverage. He filed complaints. He pushed accusations. He tried to use systems against her. And at one point, when she was terrified about what was happening to their son, he basically says out loud here, you know, this can all stop if you just pay me. And this is coercion, this is legal abuse, this is financial abuse, this is post-separation abuse. And the horrible thing here is that the survivor here is being attacked through the systems that are supposed to protect people like her and people like you. And up next, we're going to be discussing the fear, obligation, guilt in Rebelle's story. And the fear for Rebelle showed up as fear of being wrong about him. So Rebelle had this strong inner voice, as we already mentioned, and throughout the relationship, that inner voice kept telling her something was off. She noticed the phone calls. She noticed the way he looked at other women. She noticed the explanations just did not sit right. She noticed the gap between the man who publicly adored her and the man who privately made her feel confused, alone, and responsible for everything. But every time she questioned him, he had an answer. He denied, he explained, he cried, he made himself the wounded person. He made her feel jealous, suspicious, and unfair. So the fear here became, what if I am misreading this? And that kind of fear can keep someone stuck, because it makes leaving feel like an overreaction. It makes the survivor wait for proof that cannot be explained away. And in Rebelle's case, he was very good at explaining things away. And there was also the fear of losing the story, that fate story in this relationship. That relationship began with this huge feeling of fate. He told her that he'd been looking for her for a year, and there was just a sense that life had brought them together for a reason. And then later, when they moved to France, it felt like this dream. And it was this dream from her vision board. So when she was close to leaving him, leaving just didn't mean leaving him. It meant leaving this story, leaving this fate story. It really meant letting go of this fantasy that this was leading somewhere. And it meant facing the possibility that what felt like fate may have just been part of the trap. And that is a painful thing to admit, because you're not only grieving the person, you're grieving the meaning of what you gave this relationship. And there can be a little bit of shame in here as well. And then we have obligation. An obligation in this story for Rebelle. She felt obligated to be the strong one, obligated to help him become better, obligated to manage the household, obligated to keep the family functioning, obligated to be fair in the divorce. And this person was the victim. He presented it early on and created this emotional job for Rebelle. He wasn't just a partner. He became someone that she felt responsible for. And that is how obligation here kept Rebelle stuck. And for Rebelle, this was made even stronger by the way other people reacted to him and how therapists responded to him as well, constantly making him this wounded character and this victim. And then Rebelle at that point, was confused, and she then starts to feel even more responsible for him instead of taking care of her own needs, which keeps her in this relationship longer. And then we have guilt in Rebelle's story, and guilt is very much tied to obligation here. Once Rebelle felt obligated and responsible for him, accountability or holding the accountability becomes much tougher, and there was never any resolutions, and that accountability starts to feel cruel. You feel guilt. Leaving starts to feel like you're abandoning them, so you feel guilt. Anger starts to feel unfair, so you feel guilt. And you're combining this with the cognitive dissonance too, and Rebelle's confused about who he really is. And for Rebelle, this was made stronger by the way other people and even therapists responded. So he could present as this wounded person, guilt. He could present as someone who needed understanding, guilt. And because Rebelle was strong and capable and articulate, the focus could shift onto whether she was expecting too much from him. Guilt. So even after she said that she wanted a divorce, she still tried to be amicable. She still felt sorry for him. She thought about giving him money from her settlement. She still wanted to do things the right way. He said the money did not matter. He hinted that he might hurt himself. There is this very powerful form of guilt going on because now the survivor is being pulled into this emotional emergency mode. The focus moves away from what he has done, and it just moves into like trying to calm him down, helping to stabilize him, making sure he doesn't do something. And that is a trap that many survivors experience. The person who is causing the harm becomes the person everyone is worried about. And the survivor who was already hurt, like Rebelle, becomes responsible for managing the abuser's emotional state. And that guilt can keep someone from holding firm. And in Rebelle's case, the guilt was especially harmful because behind the scenes, he was not just a broken man who could not handle the end of the marriage. He was secretly planning. He was pursuing her money. He was living a double life. He was managing narratives. And he was using her conscience as leverage here. And that's how guilt was used to keep her around and confuse her, but to also stall her divorce and to try and take advantage of her in post-separation abuse, legal abuse, and everything under the sun in that post-separation abuse realm. So that is the fear, obligation, and guilt of Rebelle's story. And things that I want for Rebelle going forward, the first thing I want for Rebelle is a deeper release from responsibility that was never hers. She was made to carry too much, his emotions, his lack of responsibility, his image, his future, the chaos, his victimhood, his parenting failures, the legal attacks. And I just want her nervous system to feel in a real way that she does not have to carry this at all anymore. The second thing I want for her is just continued trust in her inner voice because she lost it a little bit. Her inner voice was there. It was speaking. It was warning her. But the problem was not that she didn't have this intuition. The problem was that inside this system, it was designed to make her doubt that voice. And I just want her to know that that inner voice did not abandon her. It was there. That other person was actively working to quiet it and to make you doubt it. And I just want her to continue to trust that inner voice. And the third thing I want for her is just room to grieve, because this post-separation abuse has postponed a lot of that. And when you're when you're in these legal and psychological battles, you don't get to feel everything. You don't get to feel free. You just have to keep moving. You have to protect your child. You have to respond to the next crisis. And I just really want her to have this space to grieve everything, the relationship, the fantasy, everything that had to do with this relationship. And I just want her to have the space to process all of that grief. So I hope all of these things for you as well, whoever is listening and whoever really resonated with her story. I hope you found this follow-up episode, this debrief, to be helpful and insightful and validating. And for those of you that want to be a guest like Rebelle was on our Survivor Story episodes, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, click on the guest form, and fill out the form, press the submit button, and we'll go from there. Also at our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, we have a support group with Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. So join our support group today. And we also have a newsletter, and our newsletter, if you sign up, you get a new workbook for every new survivor story that comes out at narcissistapocalypse.com. And that is it for today's debrief. So for myself and Rebelle, we hope you have a good night.